I'm Erin McGowan, and I lead solutions engineering for Dataiku, and I'm going to be the host of this panel today. So we're going to be hearing from AI pioneers, as I call them, from Palo Alto and Prologis. And really, they're going to be talking about how they're infusing AI throughout their business through use case prioritization as well as organizational alignment. So what I want you to take away from this session is some of their best practices of how they're using Dataiku to act as this springboard for their AI initiatives. And we're going to divide this panel into two parts. So we're first going to hear from Lionel from Palo Alto, and then we're going to invite up Jennifer and Luke from Prologis to hear their story, and then we're going to actually open it up for Q&A for about 5 minutes. So I'd first like to welcome to the stage Lionel.
Hey everyone, thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. So Lionel, why don't you talk first, introduce yourself, give a little background, also a little bit about Palo Alto, and also what your team does, what they're chartered with.
Yes, so my name is Lionel. I'm part of the data science team at Palo Alto Networks, where I support specifically the customer support team and the sales and marketing teams as well. Palo Alto Networks is a leading cybersecurity company. The vision of the company is to make each day safer and more secure than the one before. And what we try to do to achieve that is offering this enterprise cybersecurity platform that offers network security, cloud security, endpoint protection, as well as a set of cloud-delivered security services that we call CDSS. And the team I'm part of has 9 data scientists, 4 principal data scientists that also play the role of tech leads, leading different projects and supporting specific business units. And we also have 1 senior data scientist part of the team.
And how long have you been using Dataiku?
Yes, so I've been using Dataiku for 4 years now, and it's been a great experience so far.
So tell me a little bit about the use cases that you're currently working on.
Yes, so as I said before, as a principal data scientist, I also lead a couple of projects. Some of them are around customer retention models, where we try to monitor the customer health. And another example is an escalation management platform that we built recently. The goal is to help our support team prioritize their work, decreasing the time to resolution of our support tickets, as well as increasing the customer satisfaction. Another example also is a RAG-based application that we built for our marketing team for content generation. The goal is to help them automate the content generation process. So think of blog posts, press releases, articles like that.
Those are great use cases and very applicable for other customers that we have. So how are you prioritizing those use cases, and how has that evolved with Gen AI now?
Yes, so I would say that the main way, we have a pretty clear and well-defined process in place. Our business leaders and other SMEs come with a request through a business intake form. And that request goes through what we call an AI model team that is composed of 3 teams. We have the data science, the information security, and the legal team. So they look at different aspects of the project, but very complementary ones. The data science team will focus on the feasibility, the risk, the value of the project. Because we're a cybersecurity team, the InfoSec team will focus on data privacy, data security, and the legal team helps us stay compliant where applicable. So this is one way, but this is not the only way. I was talking about the escalation management platform earlier. So this is an example of where our IT organization hosted a hackathon last year. So almost a year to this day, the hackathon took place. And I was leading a team of 5. We were 3 data scientists, 1 SME, 1 software engineer. And we came up with this idea of building that platform to just help predict the likelihood of a support ticket to escalate, because this is a very costly thing when it happens. And and that's also a good example where Dataiku was very helpful for us to just quickly go through the data prep stages like EDA, feature engineering, feature selection, model building, and all of that, and have time to focus on integrating that to the app that we wanted to present, as well as spending time on the actual presentation, because those matters, especially in a hackathon. So this gave us visibility and also support from the business. And this is how that specific project, for example, was approved. And fast forward to today, we have a fully functional app that our support team is using.
So that fully functional support app, in that particular case, tell me a little bit about not only that app, but in general with the projects. Who are your daily collaborators, right? And how are you ensuring you're meeting stakeholder expectations and you're aligning with them to demonstrate the value of those creations in that RAG app with the support ticket application?
Yes, so I would say that the process we have in place for project selection helps a lot. Because we have to go through the AI model team, so we sort of are aligned from the start. That being said, for me then as a data scientist, my focus is on two things: transparency and explainability of the models. So transparency is, for me, about explaining what goes into the model, how the model works, and also what constraints we have to work with. And as you mentioned, the RAG application is a good example of that. So early on when we started working on that, I presented the architecture to the team. And one of the requests they had was to be able to see what chunks are retrieved from the vector database, so they have an idea of what's happening behind the scenes. And we found that to be a great idea. So we added that box into the UI where they could see what specific chunks were retrieved from the search, and as well as the source as well, so they can go and double check, but also give us feedback on that, like from the UI. And this helped validate that the retrieval portion of the app was actually working fine. But another constraint we had at the time was around the context window of those models. I know it seems very unbelievable today with models that have 1 million tokens, but back in the days, just last year, we only had 8,000 tokens to work with as a context window. And so it was clear, it was also very important to make that clear to them, because it had an impact on the latency of the model, because we were making multiple calls to the LLM when we were sending stuff that were over the context window. And so that transparency helped like building trust, but also improved the app overall. Explainability, on the other end, is providing a description of what the model outputs or how the model output came to be. And that has been very important, especially when we were replacing existing rule-based systems that are usually interpretable by a more complex machine learning model that isn't interpretable, but where we can provide some sort of explanations using models like SHAP and stuff like that. So I would say that transparency, explainability as well have been very key to like build trust. And of course, there is also this feedback loop that we try to also integrate in our use cases, and continuous testing, improvement. So that those have been key.
I know that's been a hot topic around building RAG applications, so I'm sure you're going to get a couple questions on that application. Great. Well, thank you. That was great to hear about all the use cases, how they're prioritized within Palo Alto. Next, I'd like to welcome to the stage Jennifer and Luke from Prologis. Thanks for joining. Same question. Love to have you introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about Prologis, and also tell us about your team and their priorities.
Hi everyone, Luke Slotwinski, and I oversee data and analytics at Prologis. We're the world's largest logistics real estate company. Now, what that means, other than the feedback, is that typically when you're on your phone shopping on Amazon, finding that item that you want, and you get excited because you have next day delivery, Well, we're the landlord behind most of the buildings that allow people to have that same-day delivery service. We're the largest of our kind with 1.2 billion square feet. Now that number is hard to wrap your head around, but think about San Francisco Bay. If our roofs, you put them side by side, we could cover San Francisco Bay about 30 times over. We serve the needs of various different customers, from the likes of Amazon, Home Depot, FedEx, to mom and pop shops who are looking to have a place to serve their logistics needs. Jen?
Great to be here. So I'm Jen. I'm a lead AI ML engineer on Luke's data and analytics team, and I'm responsible for operationalizing all of our AI ML projects. So what that includes is kind of the architecture design, but can we scale these projects, and then how do we integrate with other systems? It also involves working very closely with our data science teams to make sure they have the tools they need, which includes Dataiku, which we've been using for about 2 years. And then it also involves making sure they have the data that they need, things like that. And then, of course, deploying their projects and then ongoing monitoring after deployment.
So when we were prepping for this panel, some of the use cases that you all are building are incredible. So tell me, how are you prioritizing those use cases, right? And what are some of the challenges that you're facing when you are building those use cases?
Yeah, from a priority perspective, we align our use cases to the company's business strategy. So every year when the business plan comes out, we look at how can we drive the company's strategy forward, and we partner with different business leaders to help them operationalize these projects. As it comes to a governance structure, when our journey started off, we were a classic data warehouse. We were running on an Oracle stack with an Oracle reporting front end, and what we decided to do is to meet the company's needs. As the company continued to diversify, we got into the cloud. So we got onto Snowflake, and we really focused on our data model so that we could resemble what the company is, who we are, what we do with our data. So we really invested in our semantic model, and that semantic model was the foundation of initially descriptive analytics. So management, operational analytics, really telling what was happening in the company was that first use case that drove us to look at proper data modeling and then delivering data value from there. And then as we continued to evolve, we got into geospatial, and we got into more of the data science and advanced analytics use cases. Jen?
Yeah, so if we look back maybe 5 years ago or so at the start of our journey with AI/ML, it was, a data scientist building a model on their local machine, usually with data extracts, and then tossing that to us and how do we actually deploy this and make this actionable? So that's where we started. And so basically, I would take their code, package it up, and deploy it in AWS Lambda function, creating an API service. Now, that was very tedious because, they might have different system dependencies and package dependencies and things like that that would need to get worked out when we deployed. So then we kind of moved towards this centralized development platform. We were using Jupyter Hub servers, where we could closely mimic that system and be able to centrally manage the packages. And then it was very seamless to kind of take their code that they wrote in Python or R, and then move that over to productionalize it in AWS. So that worked well, but we still had the problem of you needed to be a coder to be able to build these models. That was kind of where we started looking at auto AI ML platforms to say, how do we take this to the next level? How do we democratize it and make it available to more users? So again, we've been using Dataiku for about 2 years, but now we have analysts on the platform, and really it's supported our entire development lifecycle. They can come in, they get seamless integrations with all of our data source systems. They can do EDA, build models, build web apps or dashboards. Like it's very powerful, and it's enabled a lot of our users.
Right. And thanks for sharing, your architecture set up to facilitate some of these use cases. I think it really helps, other customers to say, okay, here's my environment. We're doing similar. We have a similar tech stack, and how do we operationalize not only the tech but also the users and the alignment with other stakeholders in the organization. So managing expectations of your stakeholders. So who do you work with on a day-to-day basis, and what is the output and the value, right? What do you, when you're making that case for the work, how are you doing that, and how are you getting that alignment across the business?
Yeah, we really work with all the departments in the company, from the start of a life cycle of purchasing land to building a building to operationalizing and leasing that building. Across the board, we engage with every business stakeholder. And what makes a successful project for us versus one that isn't is the technology, frankly, is the easy piece of most problems that we solve, right? Talented engineers can create any solution that anybody would ever need. The trick to it is making sure that, one, it aligns to the company's strategic goals, and then two, having a leader who's invested in seeing that thing. Someone who's going to wake up every day thinking about how can they leverage the product that we've built to drive the decisions that they make, to manage their team, right? At the end of the day, everybody, including us, shows up to work wanting to do the best thing for the company. But if the leader who's focusing the team isn't using data to make their decisions, no matter how good of a product we build, that product's gonna go nowhere. So that is one of the key ingredients for our success, and the way that we enable it is we partner with an operational excellence department within our company. That department is focused on process engineering, process adherence, and standard work. So a lot of our deployments, when we say, here's an AI model or here's an analytics product, it folds right into a business process, a decision with it, a business process step that measures the efficacy of it. And that's how we really drive significant results.
So when new waves of technology came out, a year plus ago, right? Gen AI came out. How does that impact your roadmap, right, from a prioritization standpoint? And what are the considerations that you take into account when bringing these, new concepts or new technology in-house?
Yeah, great question. When we look at Prologis, we're a big company. Again, $5 billion of revenue a year. But that $5 billion of revenue comes from about 2,000 employees and an IT department of about 140 people all in. So our biggest constraint is time, right? We do not have the time to invest in things that are not needle moving for the company. And when we look at that in terms of technology, we also aren't going to custom develop everything. We build for competitive advantage, and we buy for commodity and scale and speed. So when we make those decisions, we really look at two-way doors. We make very select choices over one-way doors. And what I mean by that is technology that entrenches us, technology that we're really stuck to, like Dataiku, for example. It is the glue that stitches everything together. Our data lake being on top of Snowflake, again, a strategic decision of a one-way door where we know that transitioning off of it would be difficult. And as it comes to emerging technology, that number one decision that we look at from a management perspective is that it's a two-way door. Right, so things like modular architecture, where we can plug and play components in and out as they come and go, and interoperability between our tools are those keys that we look at superficially. And then I'll ask Jen to talk about it from a technology angle.
Yeah, I think when we're looking at it from an architecture perspective, we really want to make sure that we have that modular design so that, like Luke said, we're not entrenched in any one tool, that we can easily swap those out as new technology comes out. So that's what we always keep in mind. And really with Gen AI, it was a big hype. There's always new tech coming out around that. And we really didn't want to get into the habit of constantly researching all of these things and not actually making progress. So the way that we typically look at it is we'll do our research, we'll figure out what the options are, narrow it down to a couple, and do a quick POC to say, does this work for us or not? And then if it does, we can actually include it and continue down that road.
I've asked a lot of questions. I think we can open it up to the audience for questions for Luke, Jennifer, and Lionel. Question over here. And do we have mics? So the mics are coming.
Thank you guys for such information and cases that you've shared with us. Well, data is the main point where we're trying to use AI, yes? And my question is how you're working with data quality and data consistency. Maybe you already used AI tools to manage that and measure data consistency itself, because nowadays we have a lot of services generates data, and sometimes it could be some not consistent. Maybe you have such case. Thank you.
Yeah, fantastic question. So when we developed our modern data stack on top of the cloud, we've modeled our data to represent who we are and what we do as a company, and that was a solid foundation. But to your point, we found a lot of gaps. Like, while the data model was good, it represented the company, when you looked across the metrics and the attributes, there were holes in it. And what we started doing is partnering with business units to work on those, but we also communicated that back up to the executives. And one of the stories that I'm most proud of is our CEO took this to heart. He realized, to be a data-driven company, we as a company needed to lean in. So about 2 years ago, what he did is he challenged the entire company about data quality. He took a significant portion of everyone's bonus, no matter whether you were a maintenance tech or you were the head of operations, and he put that on the line on a data quality measure. We started the year at about 80% aggregate data quality across 6 different measures that drive our company, and the challenge to us was to get to 98%. And so we came in and we started developing different baseline reports, enabling leaders to actually understand where their data quality gaps were. Our operational excellence team mapped that to business processes to say, where in a business process should this data get created, be used, be updated? And through all those efforts of the entire company coming and leaning in, we ended the year at 99% data quality. And then we went into sustainment of saying, like, how do we make this not a one-time effort? How do we keep this ongoing? And through today, our data quality, I'm happy to report, has stayed top-notch across those most strategic pieces of data.
Everyone's responsible for data quality.
Yeah, so one question I have is that how do you identify the areas where you should do the project next, and how do you measure success?
That's a very good question. I would say that it's been changing a little bit lately as well with Gen AI, I would say. So the hackathon I mentioned earlier was a way to crowdsource ideas across the company. And then after reviewing, especially the feasibility, but also the value and the risk, for example, the RAG-based application has a pretty low risk because there is still human involved. And again, just to remind us, it's that app that they use to generate marketing assets. So you would still have humans in the loop to fix issues, if any. So I would say that it's been a mix of just reviewing use cases that are brought to us, as well as crowdsourcing across the company different ideas and putting everything together, reviewing all the aspects, security aspects, legal aspects, and then picking those that really would bring the most value to the company.
What I'll add to that, for us at Prologis, we really look at it from, is it supporting strategic objectives of the company, number one. Number two, how good of a technical fit is it for something we can do? So where can we put in the least amount of effort for the most amount of value? And that value can be the count of people that it impacts or the business decisions that it impacts. And slightly, we adopted our approach there when it came to generative AI. Our North Star for generative AI is decision automation. Again, because the biggest constraint of the company is time, because we are so constrained on people. That was a North Star, but we also knew that those decisions and those kind of use cases would really come at a lot of cost at getting them incorrect. So we started on the other end of the spectrum of operational efficiencies. How can we help people move faster, be more insightful, do their job better, but help them in a way that's internal to Prologis? If it breaks for our employees. And use that as a way to build up a foundation where we can get better and better and start making those more complicated use cases come to life, with decision automation being that North Star we're still marching towards.
How do you get your stakeholders to consume what you are proposing? How do you influence them?
In terms of adoption of the products?
Yes.
Yes, so that is the one where I mentioned operational excellence, is folding it into a business process and making sure that the product that we deliver isn't just a product that some leader thought would be very useful. It is folded into how their teams are operating and the decisions that they're making. Those are the use cases which we prioritize above all else because of an invested stakeholder.
And I would just add that it's a very challenging thing for sure. And for us, it's also been making sure we have a roadmap, like a clear roadmap in terms of, for example, improvements that we're going to do in the future, but also like collecting feedback from the end users so they know that we are taking into considerations where we are still lacking or behind, and we're going to address that later. So I think that has been also, pretty helpful in improving adoption of our models and use cases.
Any other questions? Yep, one right here.
Sorry, I had a question, and I have the mic. So, at Prologis, when you were transitioning from traditional stack to modern stack with Dataiku and other tools, in that moment of time when the transition wasn't complete, how did you manage the day-to-day data needs that the stakeholders had then, and then kind of focusing also on building what would be the future?
Yeah, fantastic question. When we started with the old architecture and we wanted to get on the new architecture, one of our primary objectives was to be the least disruptive to our end users. So we invested in technology around data virtualization. And what we did is we first virtualized, we applied virtualization on top of that old data warehouse, and we replumbed all of our reports to leverage that. And then what that allowed the team to do is to now bite off at that old stack one piece at a time, moving it over to the new stack, to the cloud stack, and then rewire those report components back to the new stack. So piece by piece, we chipped off at that architecture, replacing it till everything was running on Snowflake and on the modern data model, and then we did the cutover. That cutover was the biggest non-event because all of our end users were using the same reports the same way with that virtualization layer abstracting everything. Jen, anything to add?
Yeah, I would also add that we take the same approach, specific to AI/ML. Like, for example, with all the language models that we expose to our users, we have a pass-through service. So if we decide to swap out where we're getting those models, whether it's Azure OpenAI or we move to OpenAI, we can do that behind the scenes, but they're still hitting the same endpoint.
Got time for one more question, right here in the middle.
You mentioned that the North Star of Gen AI for you was decision automation. So how do you quantify the ROI, and how do you manage the related risks of not taking the right decision?
In terms of ROI, the operational efficiencies to us for that is being able to make better decisions for people. So that is, I would say, a soft benefit, because every time you can save someone time that's going to get consumed somewhere else. But being able to be more effective from a leadership perspective, that is top of mind. From decision automation, again, because those of you familiar with real estate, anytime you've bought a house, you can look on Zillow, look at all the things about it, but where it is, how it looks, maybe the stream that's behind it makes decisions that I want to buy that house. Very much the same thing in logistics, real estate, is these are difficult decisions to fully automate because they're not entirely systematic. So what we're looking at is how do we provide guidance to say, here is a range of possible values for the price per square foot or the cap rate of a building to help our field be more assertive when they go to negotiate, when they go to make decisions. Those are the core drivers behind AI. And in terms of justifying value, again, I think we're lucky in the sense that our C-suite, especially our CEO, sees this as not something to give us competitive advantage, but If we don't do it now, we're going to be left behind, right? He said that AI is a fast-moving train, and if you don't jump on it now, it'll run over you in a year. And that's the fuel that, again, drives that innovation and that sense of urgency through the entire company.
Managing the related risk of let's say, making bad decisions.
Right, and so on that one, that's where it goes back to, we are not trying to make 100% of the decisions, we're giving guidance, still leaving the human in the middle. I mean, having that person make the decision, but having them make an informed decision that's supported by data.
Luke, Jennifer, Lionel, thank you so much. Thanks for sharing your story, how you're prioritizing your AI use cases, maybe some of the challenges, but also how you're showing that value and working to get organizational alignment across those use cases. So thanks for being here.
Thank you.